Hello and welcome to First Chapter Friday. Today I'm going to be reading from Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. This is a fractured fairy tale novel. It follows one of the ugly stepsisters. So in this one, Cinderella didn't win the prince. It was the ugly stepsister who cut off her toes in the original Grimm fairy tale for her foot to fit in the slipper. And so she won the prince and she should be happy, but it just goes down a dark, dark path. So if you like the original fairy tales that have that darker edge, you will probably like this. And it is one of the 2020 Lone Star titles. And I hope you enjoy. This is a dark tale, a grim tale. It's a tale from another time, a time when wolves waited for girls in the forest. Beasts paced the halls of cursed castles, and witches lurked in gingerbread houses with sugar-kissed roofs. That time is long gone, but the wolves are still here and twice as clever. The beasts remain, and death still hides in a dusting of white. It's grim for any girl who loses her way, grimmer still for a girl who loses herself. Know that it's dangerous to stray from the path, but it's far more dangerous not to. Prologue. Once upon a always and never again, in an ancient city by the sea, 3 sisters worked by candlelight. The first was a maiden. Her hair, long and loose, was the color of the morning sun. She wore a gown of white and a necklace of pearls. In her slender hands she held a golden scissors, which she used to cut lengths of the finest parchment. The second, a mother, ample and strong, wore a gown of crimson. Rubies circled her neck. Her red hair, as fiery as the summer sunset, was gathered into a braid. She held a silver compass. The third was a crone, crook-backed and shrewd. Her gown was black. Her only adornment was a ring of obsidian, incised with a skull. She wore her snow-white hair in a coil. Her gnarled, ink-stained fingers held a quill. The crone's eyes, like those of her sisters, were a forbidding gray, as cold and pitiless as the sea. At a sudden clap of thunder, she raised her gaze from the long wooden work table at which she sat to open the doors of her balcony. A storm howled down upon the city. Rain scoured the rooftops of its grand palazzos. Lightning split the night. From every church tower, bells tolled a warning. The water is rising, she said. The city will flood. We are high above the water. It cannot touch us. It cannot stop us, said the mother. Nothing can stop us, said the maiden. The crone's eyes narrowed. He can. The servants are watchful, said the mother. He will not get in. Perhaps he already is, said the crone. At this, the mother and the maiden looked up. Their wary eyes darted around the cavernous room, but they saw no intruder, only their cloaked and hooded servants going about their tasks. Relieved, they returned to their work, but the crone remained watchful. Map-making was the sisters' trade, but no one ever came to buy their maps, for they could not be had at any price. Each was exquisitely drawn, using feathers from a black swan. Each was sumptuously colored with inks mixed from indigo, gold, ground pearl, and other things far more difficult to procure. Each used time as its unit of measure, not distance, for each map charted the course of a human life. Roses, rum, and ruin, the crone muttered, sniffing the air. Can you not smell them? Smell him? It's only the wind, soothed the mother. It carries the scents of the city. Still muttering, the crone dipped her quill into an inkpot. Tapers flickered on a silver candelabra as she drew the landscape of a life. A raven, coal-black and bright-eyed, roosted on the mantel. A tall clock in ebony case stood against one wall. Its pendulum, a human skull, swung slowly back and forth, ticking away seconds, hours, years, lives. The room was shaped like a spider. The sister's workspace. In the center was the creature's body. Long rows of towering shelves led off the center like a spider's many legs. Glass doors that led out to the balcony were at the end of the room. A pair of carved wooden doors loomed at the other. The crone finished her map. She held a stick of red sealing wax and a candle flame, dripped it onto the bottom of the document, then pressed her ring into it. When the seal had hardened, she rolled the map, tied it with a black ribbon, and handed it to a servant. He disappeared down one of the rows to shelve the map, carrying the candle to light his way. That's when it happened. Another servant, his head down, walked between the crone and the open balcony doors behind her. As he did, a gust of wind blew over him, filling the room with the rich scent of smoke and spices. The crone's nostrils flared. She whirled around. "You there!" she cried, lunging at him. Her claw-like hand caught hold of his hood. It fell from his head, revealing a young man with amber eyes, dark skin, and long black braids. "Seize him!" she hissed. A dozen servants rushed at the man, but as they closed in, another gust blew out the candles. By the time they had slammed the doors and shut and relit the candles, all that remained of the man was his cloak, cast off and puddled on the floor. The crone paced back and forth, shouting at the servants. They poured down the dusky rows, their cloaks flying behind them, trying to flush the intruder out. A moment later, he burst out from behind one of the shelves, skidding to a stop a few feet from the crone. He darted to the wooden doors and frantically tried the handle, but it was locked. Swearing under his breath, he turned to the three sisters, flashed a quicksilver smile, and swept them a bow. He was dressed in a sky blue frock coat, leather breeches, and tall boots. A gold ring dangled from one ear. A cutlass hung from his hip. His face was as beautiful as daybreak, his smile as bewitching as midnight. His eyes promised the world and everything in it. But the sisters were unmoved by his beauty. One by one they spoke. "Luck," hissed the maiden. "Risk," the mother spat. "Hazard," snarled the crone. "I prefer chance. It has a nicer ring," the man said with a wink. "It's been a long time since you paid us a visit," said the crone. "I should drop by more often," said Chance. "It's always a pleasure to visit the Fates. You're so spontaneous, so wild and unpredictable. It's always a party, this place. It's so much fun." A handful of servants spilled out from between the shelves, red-faced and winded. Chance pulled his cutlass from its scabbard. The blade glinted in the candlelight. The servants stepped back. "Whose map have you stolen this time?" the crone asked. "What empress or general has begged for your favor?" Still holding his cutlass in one hand, Chance drew a map from his coat with the other. He tugged the ribbon off with his teeth, then gave the parchment a shake. It unrolled, and he held it up. As the three women stared at it, their expressions changed from anger to confusion. "I see a house, the Maison de Lure, in the village of St. Michael," the crone said. "It's the home of," said the matron, "a girl." "Isabella de Lapon," the crone finished. "Who?" asked the maiden. "All this trouble for a mere girl?" asked the crone, regarding Chance closely. "She's nothing, a nobody. She possesses neither beauty nor wit. She's selfish, mean. Why her?" "Because I can't resist a challenge," Chance replied. He re-rolled the map with one hand, steadying it against his chest, then tucked it back inside his coat. "And what girl wouldn't choose what I offer?" He gestured at himself, as if even he couldn't believe how irresistible he was. "I'll give her the chance to change the path she is on, the chance to make her own path." "Fool," said the crone. "You understand nothing of mortals. We fates map out their lives because they wish it. Mortals do not like uncertainty. They do not like change. The change is frightening. Change is painful. Change is a kiss in the dark, a rose in the snow, a wild road on a windy night," Chance countered. "Monsters live in the dark. Roses die in the snow. Girls get lost on wild roads," the crone shot back. But Chance would not be discouraged. He sheathed his cutlass and held out his hand. As if by magic, a gold coin appeared in his fingers. "I'll make you a bet," he said. "You push me too far," the crone growled, fury gathering like a storm in her eyes. Chance flipped the coin at the crone. She snatched it from the air and slammed it down on the table. The storm broke. "Do you think a coin can pay for what you've just set loose?" she raged. "A warlord rampages across France. Death reaps a harvest of bones, a kingdom of totters. All because of you." Chance's smile slipped. For a few seconds, his fiery bravado dimmed. "I'll fix it. I swear it." "With that girl's map?" "She was brave once. She was good." "Your head is even emptier than your promises," the crone said. "Open the map again. Read it this time. See what becomes of her." Chance did so. His eyes followed the girl's path across the parchment. The breath went out of him as he saw its end. The blotches and hatches, the violent lines. His eyes sought the crone's. "This ending. It's not. It can't be." "You still think you can fix this?" the crone mocked. Chance took a step toward her, his chin raised. "I'll offer you high stakes. If I lose this wager, I will never come to the plaza again. And if I lose, you allow me to keep this map. Allow the girl to direct her own steps forevermore." "I do not like those stakes," the crone said. She waved her hand, and her servants, who had been slowly edging closer to Chance, charged at him. Some were bearing cutlasses of their own now. Chance was trapped, or so it seemed. "There's no hope of escape. Give me back the map," said the crone, holding out her hand. "There is always hope," Chance said, tucking the map back into his coat. He took a few running steps, launched himself into a flip, and flew over the heads of the servants. He landed on the work table with the grace of a panther and ran down its length. When he reached the end, he jumped to the floor, then sped to the balcony. "You are caught now, rogue," the crone shouted after him. "There, we are 3 stories high. What can you do? Leap across the canal? Even you are not that lucky." Chance wrenched open the balcony doors, and leapt up into its railing. The rain had stopped, but the marble was still wet and slippery. His body pitched back and forth. His arms windmilled. Just as it looked as if he would surely fall, he managed to steady himself, balancing gingerly on his toes. "The map! Now!" the crone demanded. She had walked out onto the balcony and was only a few feet away from him. Her sisters joined her. Chance glanced back at the fates. Then he somersaulted into the air. The crone gasped. She rushed to the railing, her sisters right behind her, expecting to see him drowning in the swirling waters below. But he was not. He was lying on his back, cradled in the canopy of a gondola. The boat was rocking violently from side to side, but Chance was fine. "Row, my fine fellow," he called to the gondolier. The man obliged, and the boat moved off. Chance sat up, eyeing the fates with diamond bright intensity. "You must accept my stakes now. You have no choice," he shouted. The gondola grew smaller and smaller as it made its way down the canal. A moment later, it rounded a bend and disappeared. "This is a bad state of affairs," the crone said. "We cannot have mortals making their own choices. When they do, disaster follows." The maiden and the mother stepped back into the room. The crone trailed them. "Pack a trunk," she barked at a servant. "I need quills and inks. Her hand hovered over the bottles upon the table. She selected a deep ebony. Fear, yes. Jealousy will be useful too, she said, reaching for a poisonous green. Where are you going? The maiden asked. To the village of St. Michael, the crone replied. You will stop Chance from taking hold of the girl? Asked the mother. The crone smiled grimly. No, I cannot, but I will do what we fates have always done. I will stop the girl from taking hold of a Chance.